Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the iHeartRadio network, the number one network in the United States, and also Big C Sports, the number one sports show in the universe. Of course, your Big C and them good old boys down south. Today is a beautiful Black History Month. It is February 22nd, 2017. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, as well as across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France, and of course you good old boys in Canada. We love you so much, Canada, especially your national anthem. But there's no one I love more than the land of the free and the home of the brave. Big C, that's including you and your, what do they call it, your posse on Broadway. Big C, how's the posse doing down south? Oh yeah, that's funny, Big C.
We hang out, we put on all different types of guard talk, we go out in the woods and we blend in, and have a good time.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, something going on right now. Everybody sends a lot on their water bill down here because it's raining.
Oh yeah.
All you need is a bar of soap.
Hey, bar of soap is how a lot of people in California can take baths now, because a lot of the houses have been washed out from San Jose to the Central Valley down in Los Angeles. They're having sinkholes. If you know Northern California, heading up to Lake Tahoe on Highway 50, part of that highway fell in, about a good 30 yards chunk of that just built up on the hill. And it's amazing they find out this stuff before it even happens. I guess they have some type of seismic meter under the highway, so at least they know how to divert traffic before that happens. But I do want to say, speaking of all the rain, we have hailstorms here in California. That's not something we're used to, Big C. So you good old boys, you know, keep...
Talking down here, we get it all the time, boy.
All the time. Well, I tell you what, I really appreciate Mother Nature. They had some signs on the side of the highway, Interstate 5, which runs from the Canadian border south to the Mexico border, and they're in California. Everybody's saying pray for rain. Well, I think they believe in God now, because it's been raining cats and dogs, Big C. And speaking of cats and dogs, this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Big C, I know you have no chance in the heavens of even having any mud on that Escalade with all the rain we're having right now. Big C, is that a problem for you?
Every now and then you drop something on the ground, and when you bring your hand up real quick, you just have to swing something. Yeah. You'll always be protected.
That's funny, Big C. And speaking of insurance, the whole world of basketball, at least here in Northern California, they're still making a big issue over Boogie Cousins going to New Orleans. I think Grant Napier, the play-by-play guy, and Doug Christie, a former King, you would think they're telling fast to buy tickets for the new Kings, but nobody knows who they are because they're not talking about them. Why are they talking about the girlfriend that left, Big C? She's not coming back, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this often happens with, the breakup of a relationship of a professional athlete and a team. But, Sacramento hadn't gotten any better since Cousins had been there.
Yeah.
And, Levi's finally woke up. It was like he'd been in a vodka coma somewhere.
Yeah.
He finally woke up and said, hey, we lost everything but this guy, so maybe we need to lose him.
Yeah.
And so, they made the move, which will better the organization over time, Charlton.
Yeah.
There's too many players in the NBA to say that one guy that hasn't helped your team propel to the playoffs, Charlton. Yeah. Or he's one of the top teams in your own conference.
Yeah.
That he's the franchise player. The franchise tag is used too loosely now with players. Because you have a big contract, all of a sudden you're the franchise player.
Yeah.
As a franchise player, Charlton, your winning percentage as a team should go up every year, or it should hover above 600. Otherwise, you should have a franchise player in the organization.
Well, Big C, I think that makes a lot of sense. And like you, I think that Device did the right thing. You got to move players along. And in fact, as an athlete, you see players come and go, but that's part of the business. And if you're a player, you got to understand it's a business. And don't keep thinking that you're going to go and make some organization happy, because they're always looking for the next flavor of the month. Whether you get along with them or not, that's just part of the business. Now, again, a big splash out here on the West Coast, and everything is happening on the West Coast, Big C, with Magic Johnson making his comeback, being a part of the Lakers again. And there's so many talks of Magic Johnson and the great Larry Bird. Those two great players they made basketball great again on television. Now, they both have championships, one against each other, and there are talks about maybe some trade deals that may be happening between the Lakers and also Indiana. Your thoughts, Big C?
Jonathan, if the Lakers and Indiana make a head-up trade, it would be the best trade for the NBA as far as we go. We know that the West Coast is more popular than the Midwest.
Yeah.
But if the Indianapolis, Pacers could move Paul George to the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah.
You think about how dynamic of a scenario that would be. This is the guy that, they've had a lot of talk about Kobe. This is the closest to Kobe that they can get as a current player in the NBA. The Lakers have a lot of young talent that they can shuffle to the Midwest. And maybe they would have a different mindset being in the Midwest versus being in La La Land. Okay?
Yeah.
That destroys a lot of young players.
Yeah.
But, if Paul George could somehow be swamped by Magic Johnson to come join the Lakers. Now, he went out there in your area to school out there to Fresno State, I believe, and he only did 1 year.
Yeah.
And he was one of those one-and-done guys, and, went 7th overall in the NBA draft. But you want to talk about a dynamic move with a dynamic player in the second largest market in the NBA, a vastly needed market, Charles.
Yeah.
When the Lakers are relevant, the NBA is relevant. I mean, everybody's talking Golden State, Cleveland.
Yeah.
Cleveland under LeBron James is just Cleveland.
Yeah.
It moves on the radar.
Yeah.
We have Oakland, a dominant team in the West, but it's still Oakland. It's not Los Angeles. That name resonates something. And Carmelo Anthony, you're going to make your money. Just leave. Go someplace.
And you get to a point where no matter how much you want to stay, you got to go. I remember back in the day talking to Lee Woodall. He played for the 49ers linebacker, wore number 54. Looked just like Evander Holyfield. And the guy obviously did a lot of weightlifting, Big C, if you know what I mean. He was very... Yeah.
Jackson was a 4th-round draft pick of the 49ers.
Yeah.
Played out there, played a couple of all-pro teams. Charlton, very, very good player for his brief career with the 49ers.
Yeah, and I remember he was doing a tax franchise with Ronnie Deutsch, who was doing some work with CBS Sports. And I remember talking to him. He looked like he could still play. And he said, man, I still want to play. My mind can play, but my body can't do it. I have a hard time walking. And Big C, that was 5 years after he stopped playing football. So within 5 years, he couldn't do it. And so you have a lot of guys thinking,
yeah. 5 hours after stopping playing football.
Yeah. Well,
5 hours.
Yeah, that's funny. And speaking of 5 hours, I want to say tonight's segment is sponsored by the California Lottery. What can a buck do for you? Now, Big C, hold on to your moonshine. When the earthquake happens, sometimes you spill your glass. Lotto Mega Millions up to $404 million, Big C. That's $404 million. That's enough money to get you and I to go buy, a moonshine franchise? Or do you guys, hold on, you don't need a franchise for that. You guys still do it under the table? Is that how you guys do it? Yeah. That's funny. That's funny, Big C. But we do have a lot of good ideas now. All that good water in California say, oh my God, my house is flooding. The good old boys from the South, they say, look at all the moonshine we can make with all that. Thank you, God, Big C. So the two cultures are a little bit different, Big C. And then, we did talk about something yesterday too. And Magic Johnson, obviously, he's not going to tip his card and say who he's going to go after. But I know since talking about Kareem, I still haven't heard much thought on that. I know Kareem had a medical procedure about a year ago, and obviously he's recovered from that. Thank God for that. But I still would think that he would be someone that the organization would talk about. And I want to just get your thoughts. If not LA, probably would never get into the coaching realm. And I know from here in Sacramento, the great Reggie Theus, once he played here when they came here from Kansas City, he was kind of the marquee player here. Once he was able to go to different teams, ended up getting a job. I think he ended up down at New Mexico or somewhere coaching the college ranks. But you would think with all the influx and the change they've had the organization, maybe they would put a phone call into him if you're Sacramento. But maybe the Lakers and the thing with Kareem, you think that's even a possibility, Big C?
Well, I remember Reggie Theus from years before that, Charlton, when he played at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, when he was down there under the tarp.
Yeah.
With the running Reds from 1977, one of the greatest teams in college basketball history. But when I look at the Lakers, there's two dynamic options that the Lakers can put together. I think would make a great
Yeah.
I don't know if he'll ever get hired as a head coach. But you also have Michael Cooper, Charlton.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Cooper has spent years with the LA Spartans as a head coach, okay?
Yeah.
And so this guy has head coaching experience. He's won in the WNBA. He was also a dynamic piece of that Lakers organization during Showtime.
Yeah.
So he understands spacing and flooring of players. He's not far removed from the mentality of the young players, probably because he's dealing with these women. And a lot of those are just egotistical and guys that just don't make as much money, but they're more fundamentally sound.
Yeah.
So he knows the fundamentals of the game that he's been able to transcend and put it out on the floor and get productivity from it. So you don't have to go out and hire one of these ex-big-name coaches that's been losing and is unemployed, okay?
Yeah. And
go out there and get a guy that you've had a relationship with who will listen to you.
Yeah.
And you can transpire to him what you want, Charlton.
Yeah.
He will listen to you. But if you can put, Cooper, you can put Kareem on the floor, and there's always someone. I'm not saying that Walton has to leave the organization. You can find another position for him.
Yeah.
But, he's young. And I don't know if he was capable of handling the position when he got to the Warriors, Charlton, and took over for a half a season. The team was already entrenched.
yeah, they were an all-star team.
He just had an all-star team to play with.
Yeah.
And so all you have to do is sit there and be cool. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, and that's part of the appeal of going to a team that has a lot of veteran players. And speaking of veteran players, I want to bring up a guy that obviously has a championship ring for the Boston Miracles and the Boston Celtics. But he had that great speech at the end of the championship when they beat the Lakers, and he says, "Anything is possible. Anything is possible." Do you remember the great Kevin Garnett, Big C? Well, Garnett thinks that the young players, the AAU and these young leagues are coming in and they're not ready for NBA competition with the AAU players. Would he have some validity in that? Because a lot of players that come right out of college, they tend to do a lot better. Your thoughts, Big C?
A lot of validity, Charlton. They're not fundamentally sound.
Yeah.
It's like A1 basketball, and street basketball. Most of these guys play. They're dynamic, individual, one-on-one players. But you got to realize there's 4 other players out on the court.
Yeah.
In the NBA, these players are too savvy to worry about you out there creating showtime on your own. Earl Monroe, who was a dynamic point guard with the Washington Wizards and the New York Knicks back in the early 70s, Charlton.
Yeah.
Who would shake and bake everybody. Young players today think that's what you have to do all the time. You have to have peripheral now, Charlton, in the game. You have to be able to see everything. You need to know what 2 to 3 players are doing at one time.
Yeah.
When you sit there and you're trying to cross a player over watching his feet, you miss that backdoor pass, Charlton. You miss that alley-oop. You miss that cutter coming off that high pick and roll.
Yeah.
This is what you miss. And you don't see point guards, Charlton. You don't see the John Stocktons anymore. Averaging 12 assists a game. You don't see the Steve Nashes averaging 14 assists a game, being an MVP, Charlton. You don't get that. Mark Jackson was a dynamic player, and he should be in the mix.
Yeah.
As far as the Lakers coach, when you think about his productivity with the New York Knicks as well as the Indiana Pacers, Charlton, and it's amazing that he can't get a job and all he can do is broadcast.
Isn't that something?
But he's a guy that's so knowledgeable about the game is that a guy that is losing, he won, 53 games?
Yeah. He put them at the 50-win mark. And then they got rid of him and brought in Kerr. That was personality-driven, Big C, for some reason. I mean, I guess the ownership with the Warriors, they were not happy with winning. And so they decided to change. And obviously, no one can say they did wrong because the players continue to improve. It's not the coaching that Kerr is any better coach than Jackson. They just happen to have an all-star team when 4 of your players make the all-star game.
Okay, when Kerr wasn't in there and Walton,
Yeah.
What was their winning percentage?
Yeah, it got Walton the job with the Lakers.
It was the best in NBA history.
Yeah.
When Kerr wasn't there, so to say that Kerr was a better coach than Jackson, it's really not there because when Kerr had that opportunity to come back and coach after the season, he couldn't win a championship.
Wow, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
So he won with Jackson's players. He lost when it was his team.
That's incredible. That's incredible when you think about that. And only one team can get it done. No matter how talented you are, you're always going to run up against another team. Just want to ask you this thought, Big C, and we'll touch on a few other things. With Cousins going down to New Orleans, we talked about Davis yesterday, and maybe that's going to make them a better team if, and that's a big if, they can get along. Sacramento, obviously, they're going to have to try to play more team basketball, any other big moves that you see happening on the Lakers? That you talked about Paul George. You talked about if he went there, that would be a great fit. I also thought if they could find a way to do it, but OKC is going to keep Westbrook just for a short while longer. I would love to see Westbrook end up in Los Angeles. He's like Kobe, but a little bit faster, not quite as big. But that attitude, do you see what he could? I mean, they don't have a problem selling tickets, but that just makes sense. Paul George or someone like a Westbrook that would end up in a big market like LA, that's a sexy matchup. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, I like how the commissioner is staying out of moves right now, Charlton. With David Stern in place, some of these moves we talked about would not have happened. We saw what he did with Chris Paul when he left New Orleans. He mixed him on the Lakers trade. Everybody said that became the demise of the Lakers franchise because he went to the Clippers, and the Clippers became the dominant franchise there in Southern California. But, it's finding the right fit. We don't know what's going to happen with Cousins going to New Orleans.
Yeah.
But when you sit there, here's Davis, an all-star player. He and Cousins basically do the same thing.
Yeah.
What's going to be the mindset of these two guys? You think about it, Cousins will be the senior player on the court getting to the Pelicans.
Yeah.
He'll have 7 years seniority. When you got players with 2 and 3 years experience in the league, so he's still the old man of that organization, Charlton.
Yeah, and
how is he going to adapt to the players that are established in New Orleans versus bringing his ego into town?
Yeah, that's another good point, and I want to bring this up too, Big C. When you talk about egos and players, now I'm here in the Northern California market, primarily the Bay Area, and then get down to Sacramento as well. But when I hear the Sacramento broadcast talking about the Cousins deal, and I hear the Golden State Warriors talking about what's happening with the Warriors, I think there's called Tolbert, who's doing a lot of Warrior radio work right now. But the thing that kind of turns people the wrong way is you have Grant Napier, and he's talking to Doug Christie, and he's running down, I guess, a list of players that did not like Cousins. That's stuff that should stay in the house. If you have your play-by-play broadcaster alerting every player in the league that could possibly come here, that as soon as you leave, we're gonna demonize your character. We're gonna talk bad about you, whether it's right or wrong, whether it's true or not. Why is a local broadcaster telling everybody who's willing to listen that talk to 10 or 15 players and they'll all tell you they hated a person? That's just to be kept in the house. That's hurting the other players who could be on the fringe of coming to Sacramento. They're going to say, why would I go there? They're going to disparage my character. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, hell, Charlton, it's not like I'm in love with you. On my Christmas card list.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But I don't tell everybody.
Well, no, you did send me some of that moonshine, Big C, the same stuff y'all gave USC when they went down and played Alabama and Texas. Yeah, that's funny. Hey, my mama always told me, be careful of people that offer you something to drink. Okay, have your own drink.
Well, you think about that. Here's a guy, Christie, is trying to find himself.
Yeah.
So for him to find himself, he's got to throw somebody under the bus.
No, it wasn't Doug Christie. It was Grant Napier. Christie was the one trying to say, well, don't do that. But yeah, Grant was the one doing it, not Doug Christie. He was defending the guy.
Well, Grant, he's as far as he's going to go, all right?
Yeah.
He's not going anywhere other than with the Kings.
Yeah.
And they'll move him out of there. Because if he can't build a team on radio talk, because now he's the spokesperson.
Yeah.
Cousins is gone. He can't go out there and lambaste them any longer.
Yeah.
So if he doesn't build a team now, maybe it's time to bring in that young voice of the franchise. That's going to have a new leader of the franchise.
Yeah.
Let's get that young voice that could be the voice of the franchise and move beyond this old stuff. Yeah,
because I don't think any organization, when you looked at the gentleman that did the broadcast for the Lakers back in the day, or even up here in Sacramento, or anywhere in New York, anywhere you go, did you ever see a broadcaster telling you how bad all these former players were, and then saying how can we get new people to come here? To me, maybe he needs to get off some of that moonshine if that's what he's on, Big C, but I just don't think that's cool. I also want to say that this segment is sponsored by Athletic Insurance through Ben and Mark. We can insure any professional athlete or collegiate athlete in the country, as well as high school and your local mom and pop soccer teams. Tweet out to Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the iHeartRadio network. Big C, in the last 10 minutes, we talked about some of the NBA things going on. I hope that Magic can work his magic, even though he said it may take a couple of seasons. If we look at some things happening in baseball, Baseball is not as exciting as basketball. Definitely not as exciting as football, but it does get intriguing once you get into the playoffs because every game counts. When you look at the commissioner, maybe making a step in the right direction, and Manfred, he's letting them say if you're going to be walked, I guess you can go test the bait at home plate, and then you just walk based on the manager's signal. Do you agree with that, or is that tampering with the tradition of baseball, Big C?
Well, we're talking this tampering. I understand that the need to speed up the game of baseball, not to give a guy 4 intentional pitches to walking.
Yeah.
But also, there's been many occasions in baseball talking where game has swung on that.
Yeah.
Because that pitcher threw a wild pitch and it got away, and all the player either advanced or came home.
Yeah.
So you're taking away a scoring opportunity, really, for the team that's bat. You're taking the bat out of their hand. The walk is enough, but you're taking that run potential out of their hand completely. So it's to the advantage of the team playing defense. I mean, you can sit up, Charlton, and create all the rules you want.
Yeah.
What you have to do in baseball is limit the game stoppage. It's not about walking the player. It's the game stoppage. Think about how many times the pitching coach visits the mound prior to the manager going out there visiting the mound twice before he yanks them.
Yeah.
So that's what delays baseball. And you're going to tell me that you got to stroll, 50 seconds from the dugout to the pitcher's mound.
Yeah.
You tap the arm. Then you have a conference for 4 minutes at the mound.
Yeah.
The guy out in the bullpen is walking, and you don't have a golf cart to even bring him in, y'all.
Yeah.
You walk around the golf as fast as some of these pitchers make it to the mound.
Yeah.
So, baseball, I don't like the rule by Manfred. I understand what he was trying to do, but he did the wrong rule. You got to take out some of this legging that goes as far as visits to the mound, the time that you can put a replacement pitcher on the mound.
Yeah.
That's the delay of the game is this, Charlton. Not about just intentionally walking and telling the guy to take first base. This is not Little League, okay?
Yeah, and if anything, you would think, there's something about the tradition. If people think the game is too long, they're probably not baseball fans anyway. If they want to put a stop clock to how many pitches can be thrown, maybe 20 seconds to throw a pitch, or 25 seconds, kind of like the NBA and the NFL, they all have a play clock. I think baseball is great the way it is. Maybe there's just too many games. It's hard to go out and play that many games. We know they're not going to lessen the games because that cuts into TV advertising. But it's almost like a girl that you date. She's not for everybody. Like Scarface told his friend Manolo in Scarface when he tried to date his girlfriend, his sister, he said, she's not for you, man. And you saw what happened to Manolo. We don't want her to be that hostile. But sometimes just realize the baseball purists, the people that love the game, the people that paint the stripes on the field. I think about some of the great managers like a La Russa, or even over here Bochy in San Francisco back in the day, Billy Martin. Some of the great guys that just did the game. And Tommy Lasorda, you love watching their strategy, and sometimes you can't really speed that up. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, we're talking when you mentioned Tony La Russa. Tony La Russa is really the reason, Charlton, that baseball games got extended. Tony La Russa came up with the relief pitcher, okay?
Yeah.
He came up with the dedicated relief pitcher when he had Dennis Eckersley. We had Raleigh Fingers with the A's prior to that. Who was one of the greatest of all time, Bruce Gossett with the Yankees. And there's been many. Alan Bowsky, the man Hungarian with St. Louis.
Yeah.
There's been some tremendous relief pitchers in baseball. But then all of a sudden, it created these specialists, these one-inning guys, these one-out guys, these two-out guys. So where you might have had a relief pitcher who came in to pitch 2 to 3 innings, now in that 2 to 3 innings, you might use 5 to 6 pitches, Charlton.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a pitcher limit on how many pitches you use. You should not be allowed to use a pitcher less than 1.5 innings, one and a third innings, Charlton, in baseball. So you can't bring him in there to throw 1 pitch, get 1 out.
Yeah.
He's back on the bench. That's what's delaying these multi-switches. And you think about it, when they bring in players also, Charlton, when they make multiple changes.
Yeah.
You make 3 lineup changes just to get a pitcher into the game based on a batting position. That's strategic baseball.
Yeah.
But, when you're sitting out there with the umpire and you addressing who's going where in this 5-minute, press conference that you're having out there at the home plate, this all takes away from baseball. So baseball, Manfred, I applaud you for being progressive, but, I have to question you on how you handle this as far as setting it up. You have to go back and revisit. This is almost like that immigration law.
Yeah.
You threw it out there without thought, and the consequences are not going to be what you expected.
Well, I'll tell you, there's something called the 20-second pitch clock, and they do it in a lot of the minor league games. And even the Cleveland GM says that, Chris Anatelli, he said the game goes a little bit faster. You don't really notice the clock, but it's there and everybody's aware of it. So maybe that's something they can do to let players know that you got to throw a pitch within X number of seconds. If not, maybe it goes as a ball, Big C. And so something like that can be implemented, but I don't think changing the game around is going to be sexy for the old timers. We really appreciate that. In this final 10 minutes of the segment, I want to say this segment is sponsored to you by One Life America Life Insurance. We're the leaders in the country when it comes to financial expense. And also United Labor guaranteed $100,000 life insurance with no medical questions. We are also endorsed by the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society. We work with all the unions in the country under the AFL-CIO, and tweet out to Big C Sports on iHeartRadio if you want to find out more about that. Big C, also, let me just touch briefly on the college basketball, the women's, top 10. We know UConn, they're just rolling, and they're 26-0 again with Coach Auriemma, and they're playing on coming up against Memphis coming up on Saturday. And so what a great season they've had. Number 2 is Mississippi State, and they are ranked at, they're 27-1 on the season, Big C. That's a lot of wins down there for that conference. Baylor's 26-2. They're number 3. Number 4 is your favorite team, the great Notre Dame. Or would that be Touchdown? Are they your favorite team, or is Touchdown Jesus your favorite, Big C? Okay. And then number 5, Maryland, 26-2. Number 6, the great Stanford Tiger Woods alma mater, 24-4, followed by number 7, South Carolina, 22-4. Oregon State, the Beavers up in Corvallis, Oregon, are 25-3. It's amazing how many great players they get to come up to the great Northwest. Number 9, Ohio State, 25-4. And then number 10, you gotta love Texas. They're 21-6. That's your top 10 college women's basketball polls. And Big C, as we close out in the final segment coming up, we know baseball is coming up in about 6 weeks. We're going to be down there in the desert watching some spring training coming up here for the San Francisco Giants and the Oakland A's. But your thoughts on the last thing I want to close out on, this baseball deal with the 20-second time clock that they do in the minors. Do you think that's a good suggestion for the majors, Big C? Your thoughts?
So, Jonathan, it would be a tremendous move. Now you're putting the pressure on a pitcher.
Yeah.
Not sitting there taking all these looks over first base. You got to increase the steals in baseball. When baseball was exciting, you had Ricky Henderson, Rock, players of that caliber stealing bases.
Yeah.
And so that was instant run production when you look at that. But now you got a pitcher, he'll sit there on the mound, he'll take 5 looks at first base, 6 looks at home plate. He's going to throw the ball over first.
Yeah.
And the fans are bored because they know that's not baseball. So they just jockeying with each other mentally.
Yeah.
And you make a catch and work it. If he can throw a guy out, he can throw a guy out. Other than that, he's holding on percentages that are going through the roof.
Yeah.
Baseball needs to find a way to excite the game. It's like when they had the home run back in the game, in Desert Eagle, when everybody was hitting the ball out of the park.
Yeah.
You can hit the ball at that park. I mean, they made it out of the infield, but, you're not in park with a different story. This is what you have to do for baseball. The players know the game, Tom. The fans know the game. They know what they want. If you want to poll people, poll the fans. Don't poll it on it.
Yeah.
He's looking for the next television commercial.
Well,
He's looking for the next endorsement side in the station. Poll the fans. Let the fans tell you what you want. Because that's who is the one who has supported the game throughout its history. And I just dislike all professional sports because they have ostracized the fans and given the reporters so much renownment.
Yeah.
They're the only opinion that matters.
Well, Big C, I just want to ask you, when you looked at the Big C World Series last year with the Chicago Cubs and the Cleveland Indians, I don't see many people complaining that the game went too long. When Barry Bonds was chasing Hank Aaron's record, I don't see anyone complaining at AT&T Park that the games were too long. When you had the Atlanta Braves competing for championships every year, no one complained. When the Boston Red Sox won a couple of championships over in the baseball world, no one complained. And when the Yankees were winning, it seemed like every other year, no one was complaining that the baseball game was too long. My thought is, what's happening is now, because there's so much money and so much overexposure because there's too many games, that's the only thing. It's kind of like a movie, or not even a movie. You were telling me you were on a date with somebody and you said, I'll call you tomorrow. She said, no, I'm not going to call you. Was that you, or was that a TV commercial you were talking about, Dixie? Okay. So sometimes they get it mixed up, Big C. But if it goes on too long, sometimes that could be the thing that hurts baseball. And in the final 2 minutes, I just want to get your thoughts on this. If you look at basketball and you look at baseball and football, you also have to look at hockey, which is second tier in the United States, but it's great in Canada. But there's not so many teams in the National Hockey League in Canada, and they love that sport. They have CFL football too. But why is hockey so popular in Canada? Is it because they don't have the oversaturation of teams, Big C? Could the United States learn something from that, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charleston, it's fast action and it's dynamic. If you freeze the puck too long, Charleston, and loses them, they'll call a timeout and drop the puck on you. They're not going to sit there and let you delay the game. Hockey is about continuous action. And when you talk about hockey players, Charleston, they may be the best conditioned athletes in the world.
You think so?
You think about this. You got raw running over 220 pounds, standing over 6 feet.
Yeah.
Running around on ice with knives strapped to their feet. And being graceful and powerful.
Are you talking about the guys that you hang out with down in the South, Big C, or you talking about the NHL? Which league you talking about, Big C? Oh, okay.
You take a football player and put him on ice.
Yeah.
You take a basketball player and put him on ice. Even a baseball player, John. But the hockey player can translate to those other playing surfaces.
Yeah.
The other players can't do it so freely. So when you want to talk about the best athletes out there in all of those sports, I got to raise my hand for the hockey guys, Charlie. Not only that, you can use that ice in the brick.
I can understand, Big C. I knew you poured ice on something that's good. In the last segment, I want to get your thoughts. I know we have a lot of good things happening with this trade deadline coming up, and for the NBA, we also have this new start to baseball again. We're very excited about that, even though it's about 6 weeks away. We're looking forward to football, even though we just had the Super Bowl. But what's on your mind? What are you most looking forward to? We know that we have golf coming up with the Masters down in your neck of the woods. In the last minute, Big C, what are you looking most forward to coming up over this weekend, Big C? It better not be moonshine. Yeah.
Everybody's talking about setting their salary cap. And, fans always say, how can they let him go? Easy. It says cut.
Yeah.
If your organization hasn't gotten any better, or even if your organization has reached the pinnacle,
yeah,
it's about keeping the team strong.
Yeah.
It's about replenishing your stock. And, for so long, it's like what Jimmy Beth said. That she was probably the cause of the Lakers' demise because of her relationship with her brother, is that she held on to the relationship longer than what she should have dealt with the business deal.
Yeah.
And I can understand what she's saying in that. And so this is what teams are starting to face this weekend, Dolphins.
Yeah.
But they have to remember, do we move forward with the organization, or do we support the fans and supporting us and keep their favorites in house?
Well, Big C, that is very true, and it's always true every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide. Follow Charleston and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network, the #1 media network in the United States, and also Big C Sports is voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. We always want to say there's never any room for domestic violence. If you ever hear of any woman being hidden or being grabbed by the crotch, just call 911, because no one should have to deal with that garbage on their own. As we always tell you, every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide. Follow Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network. And as we always tell you, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.